When we feel isolated and alone, we actually have more company than we think. Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Dr. Shafer of Talks with Dr. Shafer. I'm so glad you're here. I'm a physician, mom, life coach, musician, author, publisher, and I am passionate about using storytelling as a tool to help you reclaim your story and build your most beautiful future. On today's short talk on Talks with Dr. Shafer, we're going to discuss that feeling of being shipwrecked and how when we feel isolated and alone, we have more company than we think. When we are feeling shipwrecked, it's easy to imagine that we are alone on an island, but the truth is we are never alone. There are people beside you living this experience, hidden in part by our commitment to allowing shame to dictate what parts of the normal human experience we share with one another. Yet, if we decided to eliminate shame and to share all of our emotions and experiences, even the difficult ones, we would quickly realize that we aren't alone on this island, but that we are surrounded by others who have similar life experiences, yet different talents and tools that we could learn from, and that we could work together to help one another through this immense challenge and season of life. History is full of lessons that remind us of this. In 1965, a group of young boys, Sion, Stephen, Kolo, David, Luke, and Mano, were sick of their strict Tongan school and wished to escape to distant lands and a life of their own choosing. They borrowed, without his knowledge, a local fisherman's boat one day and set out into the sea, only to be lost and marooned on a small, desolate island. Modern sentiment and Western civilization would lead us to believe that this scenario is a recipe for conflict and violence amongst the shipwrecked boys. That there is no way that this group of young men with limited resources and a scarce chance of survival will work together rather than try to survive in isolation. We've been made to believe that each of us is only out for ourselves and that when the chips are down, we will take what we can and leave others to their own devices. We've seen it play out, and this feeds into this fear, which is what it is. These beliefs stem from our fears of isolation. None of us wants to be alone, but the stories we are told of how people have turned a blind eye to others' suffering instill this fear in us, even though we know other stories of great human kindness exist and have experienced it in our own lives as well. The survival of the fittest, so it is said, is what will rule in times of chaos and uncertainty, we are told. But this overlooks a key part of how our brains have evolved to live in communities for the benefit of our survival. We may be living this life for the first time, but our brains and our nervous systems benefit from many, many thousands of years of evolution that have led to fine-tuning of subconscious biases and reflexive behavior. We can benefit from leaning into the wisdom that we've inherited via our nervous systems that tell us that living in healthy and mutually beneficial and supportive community with others is not only enjoyable, but it is key to our survival. And to move away from this idea that we are safest living in isolation and surrounding ourselves with like-minded individuals who raise the exact same belief of isolation being safe and right, and march toward our own collective demise, missing out on the opportunity to stop and learn to work together and take back our destiny, even in the most challenging situations. So back to the 6 young boys from Tonga whose wish to skip out on school led to disaster. The boys, ages 13 through 16, decided to escape what they felt were boring lives on a small boat they borrowed from a local fisherman. The first night they fell asleep and were unfortunately overtaken by a storm. Their boat, damaged by the storm, was left to drift for 8 days, while the boys suffered without food or water and no help was to be found. They washed ashore on the small island of Ada now felt to be uninhabitable, and lived there in community for 15 months. Together, the boys took an uninhabitable rock in the middle of the ocean and turned it into a home that they mutually cared for. After 15 months, they were rescued by an Australian sea captain. Captain Peter Warner wrote in his memoir that the boys had set up a small commune with a food garden, hollowed out tree trunks to store rainwater, a gymnasium with curious weights, a badminton court, chicken pens, and a permanent fire, all from handiwork, an old knife blade, and much determination. When Captain Warner's ship approached the island that fateful day in 1966, 15 months after the boys had been presumed lost to the sea, one of the boys, named Stephen, jumped into the ocean and swam to the boat, telling the captain their story of survival. People simply could not believe that the 6 boys that they had just found had survived this ordeal when the captain called in his findings to the Coast Guard. Funerals had already been performed for the boys long before. But the reason the boys survived is because they were able to work together even in the toughest circumstances. After their rescue, we learned that they had worked in teams of 2 boys to complete necessary tasks such as cooking, gardening, keeping wild chickens, and keeping guard. They cared for one another, learned to harvest rainwater, learned how to handle conflicts between themselves. They passed time with art and prayer, and even made a guitar out of driftwood, half of a coconut shell, and steel wires from their wrecked fishing boat to entertain themselves. The boys even successfully nursed their friend Stephen back to health after he fell off of a cliff and broke his leg. They set it with sticks and leaves and completed his share of the community work so that he could rest and heal. An incredible story of survival and friendship. After their unlikely survival and rescue from the middle of the ocean after 15 months being stranded, the boys were brought back by Captain Peter Warner to Tonga, where they were promptly arrested. You see, the owner of the borrowed fishing boat remained angry with them over the passing of time and had pressed charges with the local authorities. It was the captain, Peter Warner, who came to the rescue yet again as a new member of this awe-inspiring community. Captain Warner knew television personalities from the area, and he was able to leverage the rights to the incredible story of the Tonga boys who survived being marooned on an island to pay the scorned boat owner off and have the rescued boys released, with their agreement to cooperate with a movie about their experience. Later, Captain Warner helped yet again by making the boys' dream of leaving Tonga come true. He hired them as the crew on his new fishing boat in Australia. The story of the young boys of Tonga, who not only survived but showed incredible resilience, friendship, and the importance of community, is an example of how we as humanity can respond to stress and challenges in life, even those that seem insurmountable, in ways that maximize our abilities to not only survive, but to make the best of the situation that we are in, to heal our wounds, to learn, to connect, create, and grow through the tough times to get to the other side. And the tough times themselves and the connections that we make during those difficult moments will serve us as we come through the storm and realize that we were never alone in it. If we learned to look around in those moments, we'll find that others are shipwrecked beside us. If we learn to look around during these moments, we will find that others are shipwrecked alongside us. Some days, we are the ones with the ideas on how to collect rainwater to keep our community from dying of thirst in those times. Some days, we're the one who slipped and broke their leg and needs extra support from our brothers and sisters. The ebb and flow of life is best navigated by leaning into our strengths, accepting our weaknesses, tenaciously focusing on our growth and survival, and never forgetting that we have resources around us to help us get through, no matter what. I hope this short talk has been helpful and interesting for you. If you would like to learn more about the story of the boys from Tonga who were shipwrecked in 1965, you can read Captain Peter Warner's memoir, Ocean of Light, 30 Years in Tonga and the Pacific, published in May 18th, 2020. As always, thank you so much for being here, storytellers, and for your commitment to growing your mindset, reclaiming your story, and building your most beautiful future. Please subscribe to the show so you don't miss our upcoming inspiring guest episodes with people who have done just that, reclaimed their story, and are now living incredible and inspiring lives. And short talks like what we had today, where we work on mastering our mindset from a neuroscience-informed perspective with inspiring news, stories, and science. Until next time, stay safe and take care. I'll talk to you soon.